Hey guys, Wyatt Claypool here. I regret to inform you that the online liberal cheerleaders are never going to figure out that Justin Trudeau is unpopular. I'm just going to be open about it. This video is all about me pointing and laughing at people who refuse to listen to other Canadians' opinions on Trudeau. They assume that because they and their two other friends like Trudeau, well, that's 100% support in my own little sample there. Justin Trudeau must be rocketing towards a re-election victory in 2025. Guys, it's not going to happen. And I'm going to keep making fun of you until you realize it's not going to happen. The funniest casualty in all this is Frank Graves, the pollster who runs Ecos. Ecos used to be an okay pollster, but that guy has pure Poilievre derangement syndrome. So I think he has been just cooking his polls recently. Most pollsters are good, but do not trust Ecos because I think he is cooking his samples to come out with more pro-liberal sort of samples. Because as a pollster, you don't just pick up the phone and call 1,000 people and see who they're voting for. You have to kind of target specific people based on who you think is going to turn out in the next election. And Frank seems to think that the people who are going to be voting in the next election are exclusively found in urban coffee shops. It is crazy the types of samples he's. My friend Chris from the Great Canadian Bagel podcast just showed how ridiculous his most recent poll is. Frank Graves only has the Conservatives leading the Liberals by 9% across Canada, even as other pollsters consistently show that they're anywhere from 16 to 22% above the Liberals. And those 22% aren't rare. You'll have sometimes two different pollsters in the same week say the Conservatives are leading by 22. But Frank thinks a +9 for the Conservatives, that's realistic. And let me say, just because you don't like a poll result does not mean it's not realistic. I actually still think that Main Street was probably on the money in BC, even though the NDP ended up winning the popular vote by just like about a point or two. But that's only really because the NDP had a much bigger turnout game because they had way more money. I think that if the Conservatives had the budget to turn out all of their supporters, remind people to vote, they probably would have easily won. The NDP in BC were just saved by how much money they had. But Chris from the Great Canadian Bagel podcast points out just how ridiculous this poll is. So it's 28 to 39. I believe it's actually a little bit less than a 9% lead for the Conservatives when you bring in the decimals here. I think they're only at like 38.6, and the Liberals were like 28.3. But these are the regionals. And Chris points out the Conservatives being at +6 in Saskatchewan, Manitoba is impossible in terms of the Saskatchewan is one of the most conservative ridings or provinces in the country. And Manitoba has gotten decently conservative since Pierre Poilievre became the leader. Do you really think that the Conservatives are only leading by 6 in Manitoba and the NDP is all the way down at 16, even though Wab Kinew is currently the NDP premier of the province and pretty popular? It makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. He then says, Ontario is not voting to the left of BC. And yes, that is true. BC always tends to be a little bit more of a mixed bag. The Conservatives are always been in a bit more of a dogfight with the Liberals and the NDP. How are the NDP only at 11% in BC? Frank, if you see that the Liberals, that the NDP are within spitting distance of the Greens and the PPC, go do your poll samples again. This is delusional. Last one. Liberals +18 in Atlanta is impossible in Atlantic Canada. Yeah, it's not going to happen. The Conservatives and other people's regionals who do a much better job than Frank Graves are showing the Conservatives sometimes leading by 20 in Atlantic Canada because they are people who don't really like the Liberals' fiscally liberal approach anymore. The Maritimes tend to be more fiscally liberal, but with such bad results over the past 9 years, that's not something that's garnering as nearly as many votes these days as it used to. And the Maritimes are very socially conservative. Do you think that the socially conservative Maritimers are going to vote for the radically woke Liberal Party these days? They are not. And definitely they're not going to be voting for the radically woke Liberals by a margin of 18% over their closest competitor. This is delusional. The Liberals are falling apart right now. But now let's just go through some posts from some liberal activists online because this stuff is the funniest. I want to start out with this one because you guys probably know Dean Blundell. Just really big lefty hack. But even he is realistic on Justin Trudeau, that Justin Trudeau is not popular and Pierre Poilievre is going to beat him. And this one lady who's like a prolific pro-liberal poster, BK Belton, was not having it at all, and I had to censor some of the stuff. So Dean just says, or she's basically responding to something he said in his previous post, and she quotes, "Impending Poilievre government. What the actual bleep, Dean?" And then Dean says, "I think it's an analytical reality." And so Dean's being rational, and then she says, "Bleep right off," and I think you're in an uninformed bleep. See ya. Dean's literally on your side. Miss Belton, just listen to him. He knows a little bit of what he's talking about. Not on many issues, but Dean apparently can read a chart and see that the Liberals are down 20 points, 18 points in many of these polls, and they're losing on all the issues. And just Justin Trudeau's approval rating is not going to recover from being as low as 24%. It's just not going to happen. Here's a great one. Everyone's favorite liberal on Twitter, if you've gotten to know her, Vicky Campbell, saying, "The media wants our Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, wants our PM Justin Trudeau, who has the highest security clearance possible, to step down so they can pave the way for Pierre Poilievre, a highly compromised Indian-Russian asset who can't get his security clearance because he's so shady. No GD way media flunkies." Poilievre doesn't want to get the security clearance because if he gets the security clearance to read the Nisakop report, guess what? He can't actually talk about it. It's worthless. Plus, the security clearance is not just looking into you. He's had to get personal security clearances before. This is a higher level one that allows them to look into the background of every friend and relative you have. And would you trust the Liberals not to leak something if they find something embarrassing about your second cousin to try and use against you? Anyways, moving on. Oh, and by the way, guys, if you ever see a little bit of a hiccup in the video, it's because for some reason I have great internet down here in Montana. But if it ever has a slight interruption, the video will go fuzzy and it won't recover unless I restart the browser. So that's why I pause and have to restart sometimes. But anyways, on to the next post. This person saying, and again, most of these are liberal-leaning individuals who are fighting with these Trudeau cheerleaders. Noda here says, "Respectfully, Prime Minister Trudeau, I think you need to hear the citizens of Canada for once and do the right thing. It's time for a change. You should call an election. And for the sake of your own party, step down. You'll have plenty of time to touch grass after that and enjoy." And it doesn't really matter what the person wanted to say. Vicky Campbell says, Noda is worried. So Trudeau needs to step down because he knows damn well Poilievre isn't the guy who can beat him. I like how Noda is probably a woman. That sounds more like a woman's profile name, but she still just assumes it's a man because it's like somebody who I guess is not pro-liberal. But Vicky Campbell goes on to say, "Every time these clowns ask him to step down, they sound more and more desperate and scared." No one's desperate and scared. Trudeau it's like, you're just terrified to fight the guy who's wetting his own pants. No, I'm not. Here's another one from Vicky Campbell that I've had to censor a bit. "Well, a full year of Donald Trump might be exactly what Canada needs to open their eyes to fascism before our election. He's a bleep and he won't disappoint us. I'm sure most of Canada is shaking their bleeping heads at the results this morning. It could work in our favor." It's not going to work in your favor. Trump being the president of the US is not going to help out Trudeau. I am sorry to inform you. Nobody is under the impression that somehow Trump becoming the next president and probably improving America's economy is going to make Trudeau look good by contrast. It's just not how politics works. It's like whenever you see those polls that show, only 18% of Canadians would have voted for Donald Trump in the US presidential election. I'm like, yeah, because Canadians don't live in the US, and because our media is very biased to the left and does not like Trump, because Canadians don't have skin in the game on who wins the presidential election, a lot of Canadians will just default to whatever the general media opinion of him is. If Alberta or Saskatchewan are part of the US, way more likely they'd go Republican than Democrat, because now they actually have to live with realities of the different parties' policies on different issues. Do you think that Alberta would vote significantly differently from somewhere like Pennsylvania or Ohio when there's a lot of fracking there? Obviously not. Anyways, here is another post. Does anyone, and this is somebody, again, responding to Dean Blundell, who's saying that we should, round up all these Hamas nuts going around harassing people. And this Eva lady says, "Does anyone realize Wealthy conservative businessmen fund those jerks to do that. It's a game. They strategize worldwide, hiring tacticians to hire agitators for the purpose of targeting specific segments of voters in order to anger or scare them. To loosen the tinfoil hat lady. Conservatives are hiring agitators. They realize there are actual left wing organizations which hire agitators for protests. This is something that George Soros's front groups are very well known for. That he will fund Antifa groups and Black Lives Matter groups to protest and riot. This is something that a lot of his money through several organizations gets funneled down into. He will fund caravans that come from Mexico to the border to be chaotic and disruptive because George Soros is a leftist. Anyways, here's another one. Uh, oh my goodness, this one should have honestly been included in my video on Remembrance Day. This Nancy Krause lady says, "Thank you for standing up to the likes of Pierre Poilievre. We owe it to all who fought and died defending democracy in Canada. They made the ultimate sacrifice to cave into these fascists, or they didn't make the ultimate sacrifice to cave into these fascists." Get a clue. Here's our favorite TikToker, or I guess it's a running gun battle between Creek Pete and Steve Boots and Frank Dominic. But here's Creek Pete saying Pierre is also not connecting, and he's not getting inundated with calls to resign. Trudeau is not connecting for reasons beyond his popularity. Again, progressives are weak and always willing to be rolled over. That's your choice, not mine. Sorry, leftists are always willing to roll over. Trudeau's been reelected 3 times. Sorry, when did they become flaky and weak? If anything, my criticism of progressives would be that they will stick by their party and leader even as the policies are obviously failing, because they tend to care more about the intention and the good vibes of the policy more than the actual results. Poilievre is not connecting. Is that why he's having just absolute massive rallies across Canada? A country when rallies and big political events is kind of a rarity up until recently because of how unpopular Justin Trudeau is. It's delusional to think that the reason why Justin Trudeau is not doing well anymore is the media is now lying to people. The media is still left, guys. You are just reacting to the fact that they used to be 11 out of 10 left, and now that Poilievre is obviously on the ascent and Justin Trudeau is deeply unpopular, the legacy media has to at least somewhat acknowledge Trudeau's unpopular. So there's more op-eds saying that maybe he should resign and media coverage around his low polling numbers. And Creep Pete reacts to this by saying, "Oh my goodness, you guys are traitors to the country." Here's another one from Creep Pete, responding to this lady, Laura Babcock, saying, "It's not rhetoric. People I speak with want an alternative to Trudeau after 9 years, but not to vote for Poilievre." So this lady is not conservative, saying, "I don't want to vote for Poilievre, and my friends and I all basically are just looking for somebody that we can vote for because Trudeau's been a disaster." And Creek Pete says, "Every person I talk to that doesn't like Trudeau doesn't have a clue what they're talking about and blame him for mostly provincial matters." Yet some people will sometimes blame like the federal government for provincial stuff, but that's not really the case overall, Trudeau. He goes on to say, "Others are influenced by social media. Perhaps instead of bending over to Putin and Modi, media in this country to do their job." What do you mean do their job? I keep hearing do their job. Do their job. Do their job. Trudeau's unpopular, media, do your job. If anything, Creek Pete's at least honest enough in a subtle way to acknowledge the fact that the media is a propaganda machine for the liberals. And if they're doing their job, that means that Trudeau's polling number should increase and that people would stop noticing that prices are going up around them. It's arrogant and delusional. A lot of these people, and you can tell by the house Creek Pete lives in and shoots his terrible TikTok videos from, he's also the thinnest skinned person on the planet. I made fun of him for going over. And when I say made fun of him, I mean like subtly, just saying that I encourage all the lefties on the Canadian lefties on Twitter to go migrate over to Blue Sky because they're all going over to this new social media app, Blue Sky, which has like no users. They're celebrating, it has 14 million users. That's not a lot. Twitter has like 400 million, 500 million right now. Yes, we've gotten a lot of people to join, but those are people who are still going to keep posting on X, and they're even opening about the fact they're going to keep posting on X. And he got like wildly mad at me, Creek Pete for saying that, even though every single one of his videos is just wall to wall, being snarky, acting like he's gonna to tell you what's up, extremely condescending, and you like push back on him at all, and just explodes in vitriol, and not even like snarky vitriol, just like screaming, mic peaking type of rhetoric. The man is a nutcase, and you can tell in his house. And I'm gonna say this to him: you're a deeply privileged loser, Creek Pete. You live in a nice house. You do not suffer the effects of the bad economy. You probably have a nonsense job. You don't work in oil and gas. You don't work in mining. You don't work in the resource sector or anything useful, probably. But you're going to tell other people that actually the economy is quite good. You're just stupid. You don't realize that Justin Trudeau is good. You don't even live in the real world, guy. You should go maybe try and touch grass once in a while and figure out that other people actually do care when their grocery prices go up, and it wasn't the grocery store owners who artificially increased the price. Inflation exists. Take an economics 101 class, dude. Anyways, here's another person saying, ooh, that wasn't the other one again. Here's a fun one. This is, again, BK Belton here saying, strong and united, I stand with Trudeau. Hashtag, there are millions of us. Approximately maybe 2 or 3 million, which is not enough to win an election. But that reminded me of the thing of that thing from the show Arrested Development, where that Funke guy stands up and screams, "There are dozens of us." There's no one who's voting Liberal anymore. There's just nobody left. Nobody is charmed by Trudeau. He's charming when the economy is good for some people, and you can kind of live outside of economic realities, because it's going to take a few years for us to realize that just spending wildly is not going to is going to hurt us. Here's even his own former advisor. If these people are going to listen to somebody, listen to. Here's Gerald Butts on Power and Politics indicating that Trudeau is unpopular, and it has a lot to do with inflation. And no, it's not because business owners are artificially price gouging people.
Just one last question. I mean, you've worked in politics a long time, obviously for liberal, progressive political parties. What message do you take from what we saw in the United States with this massive shift to the right across all cohorts, pretty much all moving towards Donald Trump and abandoning a lot of progressive candidates?
Yeah, well, when I was in politics, David, I used to say the main thing is to keep the main thing the main thing. And the main thing is to be a party that represents the interests of regular people. And I think that the Democrats are far afield from that right now, and they're kind of paying the price of it. That said, there's a lot of entrails, a lot of time to be spent looking at the entrails of this one, and we should caution drawing too broad a conclusion from one election result. I think it's pretty clear that inflation has been the grim reaper for incumbents all over the world, something we called a couple of years ago at your Rich Group, by the way, said it would happen. And it didn't matter whether you were a social democrat in Finland, a Tory in Britain, whatever Bolsonaro was in Brazil, or the Democratic incumbent in the United States. Everybody's been mowed down by this economic environment.
Gerald Butts, former principal secretary to the...
Yeah, Trudeau's going to lose. He cannot run away from inflation, and it's not price gouging. If that was the real thing, Gerald Butts would have said, oh, I think Kamala Harris didn't just highlight price gouging enough. Nobody actually believes it, because somehow they don't price gouge when better people are in office and they actually reduce government spending and taxes and make life more affordable. Somehow business owners all agree to stop price gouging people then and lower prices or maintain them. But as soon as a socialist is in government and they start jacking up spending and taxes, that's when they all start colluding. It's not because they actually jacked up taxes. Again, all this is so disconnected from reality. I love this post, and that's why I kept it to show you guys. So Roddy is somebody on Twitter who I disagree with vehemently, but he is one of these liberals like Dean Blundell and like some other people who think that Justin Trudeau should step down. And he's basically going over the current batch of liberal potential contenders for the leadership. I don't agree with him, but here's what we have, and here's his diagnosis. I agree with some of his takes, but he says Carney can destroy Poilievre economically, but lacks populism. I don't exactly agree with that. I think that Carney, the problem is he's way too like Trudeau on economics, so it doesn't matter. Clark, he's meaning Christy Clark, lol. Fraser, a definite up-and-comer. Oh, goodness, he's not. Smith, Wants to hear more. Freeland, baggage. Jolie, unlikely. LeBlanc, nope. And this guy, Stefano Barbaris, says after Trudeau wins this next election, we will have an embarrassment of riches to choose from for a leader when he decides to step down. He's not winning, guys. He's not going to win. He's not going to win because he's fumbled the leadership of the country. Nobody is going to give nobody's going to give this guy a fourth chance. He's had his chances. And Trudeau has agency. By the way, guys, for all these people who like Trudeau out there, the man has agency. He can choose to do less stupid things. But everyone's like, oh, it's always those provincial premiers doing this, or it's the world markets, or it's whatever. Who's forcing the man to keep the carbon tax? Who's forcing the man to raise taxes? Who's forcing the man to print massive amounts of money and spend on bloated programs? Nobody. Who's forcing him to attack the oil and gas industry? Nobody. It's not nuts that these people actually believe he can win. He can't win. And again, all the people who think he can win are still cheerleading him. Let's just say it. They're deeply privileged individuals. They probably earned it. I'm not a leftist to think that you haven't earned the ability to make a lot of money and be able to retain it. But these people, by their own definitions, are deeply out of touch privileged individuals. But then they're going to tell people who used to vote liberal, people who genuinely used to vote liberal, that they're just stupid and wrong and manipulated and tricked by the media because I guess it's not going to work, guys. It's not going to work, and it shouldn't work. And I'm happy it's not going to work. We actually do need a change in government. I'm a conservative, so I want the next conservative government to be as conservative as possible to roll back all the damage Trudeau has done. And and I'm going to be laughing all the way to election day, seeing all these people just not getting it. It's going to be after the election, and people are not going to get it. I guarantee you, these people are going to say that Modi stole the election for Poilievre this next year. They will try it because they have no other explanation for Trudeau's failure because they're unwilling to say it was Trudeau himself that failed. Anyways, that's it for me today, guys. Make sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't subscribed, like this video, and if you want to support us, you can always donate to the Give, Send, Go legal fund in the description below, as well as pinned to the top of the comments. My personal website's also there if you want to sign up on my leadership and nomination recommendation list. That allows me to give you my recommendations for different nomination races around the country, as well as leadership races. Sign up, especially if you live in Manitoba or New Brunswick, because those provinces will be having progressive conservative leadership races in the coming future. Anyways, see you guys around.